Hey friends, so in today's video, I am going to be showing you how you can populate multi-reference items inside of Webflow using Zapier. So let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Connor. I am the founder of the Unicorn Factory, a freelancer marketplace in New Zealand and now also in Canada. And I use this channel to show people how they can build their own online marketplaces using no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. So today I'm going to be doing a more advanced tutorial, and that is how you can use Zapier to automatically populate multi-reference fields inside of Webflow. So in order to make this workflow happen today, we are going to have to use some custom code. And I just want to tell you straight up front that if you are brand new to no code, this is some of the more advanced stuff that you really don't need to know about at the beginning. The use case that we will be solving though is one that comes up quite frequently for people who use Webflow as their CMS. And that is to automatically populate the multi-reference fields when sending data from Airtable to Webflow. But before I dive into this, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be making heaps more videos like this in the future. But without further ado, let's just go and check out the example today, which is me setting up categories for my blog. So what I want to do today is I've got a list of all of my YouTube videos that I put on my website. And what I want to do is I want to apply different tags to these videos so that I can then create separate category pages so it's easier for people to find. So if we have a look into the Webflow CMS, you can see that I have a table with all of my videos, and if we go and have a look to see how this collection is structured, you can see it has a thumbnail, description, a URL, a rich text field in case I want to add additional info, and also a link to the video so that the YouTube video shows up on my page. What I want to do now is I want to add a category field that links to another table that I have to create now. So the collection that I'm going to be creating is the category collection. And for now, I'm just gonna leave the name and the slug. I might add some additional information in the future, but for the sake of this example, that's all we really need. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna populate a few different categories that might apply to my videos. And now what I wanna do is inside of my YouTube collection list, I want to add a field which is a multi-reference field. And I want to call this category. And then I want to connect it to that collection, which I'll now be able to find down here. And now if I jump back into my video collection, I can see that I have a new field right at the bottom that allows me to add certain tags to my videos. So when you can link multiple items from another collection to another table or a different item, then what we call that is a multi-reference link. So what you can do now is you can now add those tags to your page. All you need to do is just select a collection list wrapper, select the categories field from the drop-down list, and then what you can do is you can just drop in a link, add a tag, and then you can dynamically populate that information with the data that is currently sitting inside of that collection list for tags. So then you can style those tags and you can then link it to that category. So what you can do then is you can then create a template page for those category pages. And what I'm going to do here is I actually have a page for my tutorial library. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to copy this, jump over to my categories page and paste it in there. So now what you can do is you can filter out all the videos based on the category. So I want to only filter out the categories that apply to this page, which is currently the Webflow page. So what happens now is it filters out all of the videos that are currently without the Webflow tag. You can then also populate different headings with information that is currently in that collection item. So this is a really great way to create dynamic pages for your collection. I do this with the Unicorn Factory, and it's really great to create like individual pages for skills or services and all that type of stuff. And it's really good for SEO. So that's a little secret tip. So that is the basics of how you work with multi-reference collections. Now, one of the challenges that you're going to come up with is when you use Airtable to manage your database and you want to send that information from Airtable to Webflow, then Zapier is going to cause some issues because you can't populate the collection items for the multi-reference field in the same way that you would do it with single item references. So before I show you how the Zapier setup works, let's have a quick look at how you have to set up Airtable in order to make that workflow work. So as you can see here, I've got my videos in here, and now you can see on the side I also have a category field that links to another table inside of my Airtable base. That category is over here, and as you can see here, each category has a name and it also has a video that is associated with it. Now, before we start off with the next step, one thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add a Webflow item ID. So if you don't have the Webflow item ID, this step will not work. Whenever you have a collection in Airtable and inside of Webflow, then you'll need to have a separate field for the Webflow item ID so that you can send data back and forth. Okay, so I've copied and pasted out the Webflow item IDs from Webflow and pasted them into this field here. And now if we click on this button here and add a lookup field, what we can do is we can then get the Webflow item IDs that will be comma separated. So we will be coming back to Airtable because there's one more additional modification that we're going to need to make to the fields. But I'm now going to jump over into Zapping and I'm going to show you how you can set up the Zap that allows you to send that data from Airtable to Webflow. So now we're back inside of Zapier and now we want to define the trigger, and the trigger that we are going to be using is a new record is moved into view. So the video that I am going to be adding in this example is my latest video on me setting up a freelancer marketplace in Canada. So what I want to do is I just want to populate the title of the video. I also have the image, and now I also want to apply some tags. So just for this example, I'm going to apply a Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. I'll be changing all of this later, but you know, for the sake of the example. So now what I want to do is I want to change it from backlog to ready for publish. So what that will do is it will move that record to a new view inside of Airtable called the ready for publish view. And now if I go and trigger it, I'll get all the information that I need to populate Webflow. So the first step in setting up Webflow is just to go and actually create the item. So I'm just going to create a live item, select the site and the collections, and then just start populating the information. So now you can see the categories field down here, and I think a lot of the time what people try to do is they try to add the comma separated item IDs that you can get from that lookup inside of Airtable, but unfortunately it doesn't work like that. You can do it like that for single reference items, but not for multi-reference items. And once you've tested all of that, it should have created a live item inside of Webflow that is now live on my website. If we go and check it out, you can see that it's automatically shown up here, and because I didn't really put any information into it, it currently is not working correctly. So the next step that I'm going to be showing you is what allows us to add tags or categories to our collection items. Now there is a lot of technical stuff involved with it, for example looking up API documentation. So for the sake of time, I am just going to show you how it works, and I will give you the code snippet that you need to use for this step on my website so you can just copy and paste it from there. So the app that we need to add tags to our collection item is webhooks. Now webhooks by Zapier is a premium feature, so I'm not exactly sure what plan you need to be on, but you do have to be on one of the higher plans in order to be able to access this particular app. So the action event we want to pick is custom request, and the method that we want to use is patch. Now, what patch means is it basically adjusts or fixes an existing record, and because we already created the item in step 2, all we need to do is we need to patch it. So what we want to add in the URL section is this URL here, which is api.webflow.com/collections. And then what you have to do is add your collection ID. So if you are updating, for example, your YouTube list, then what you need to do is use the collection ID of that YouTube list and populate that value in here. And then /items and then /collection item ID. And so the item ID is what you would have populated in step 2, and that is directly referring to the Webflow item ID. Now, if you want the item to be live immediately, then you also want to add a question mark live equals true. So I got all of this information from the Webflow API documentation, which I'll link in the video below. But now what you want to add into the data field is your body. So basically the information that you are sending to that particular Webflow item ID. Now I'll be leaving this code snippet on my website for you to copy and paste, but you will have to make some adjustments of your own. So this is what the code snippet looks like. It's open bracket fields, blah, blah, blah. And what you need to do then is you need to add your own field name. So in my case, it will be categories. And then what you want to do is you want to have an array. And so an array is basically a comma separated item ID. And each item ID has to be in parentheses. So it's basically this array of item IDs. However, we need the item IDs to be in parentheses. So there are multiple ways you could do it, but I came up with this little hack that I think works quite well. So what you want to do is you want to add a formula, and what you want to do is you want to add this little step here, which basically puts your Webflow item ID inside of parentheses. So I'm just going to name this Webflow item ID for Zapier. So now what we can see is that the Webflow item IDs are basically the same, but this time they are in parentheses. So now when we go back to our YouTube step, what we want to do is we want to actually look up the Webflow item ID for Zapier. And what we will see now is that the fields are in the format that we need to send to Webflow through that custom request step. Which means that now what you can do is you can take out this step here and replace it with the Webflow item ID field for Zapier. And basically what that does is it gives us the values that we then want to send to Zapier. So honestly, I wouldn't overthink it. Just follow the steps that I took and you'll be able to send those tags from Airtable to Webflow. Now in the header, we want to add bearer, and then you add your API key. So you can find all this stuff in the Webflow API documentation. So with the URL, you can dynamically populate the information by just using the values that were created in step 2 when the item ID was created. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to show you what my collection item ID is. But then when you retest this step, you can see that all of the tags have automatically been added to your live item and it all works now. And then the last step that I'm not going to show you in detail, but is to just go back now and update your YouTube videos inside of Airtable so that the slug and the item ID are populated in case you want to make changes to it in the future. And that's it. That's about as complicated as it will get when you're setting up stuff inside of Zapier, or at least as far as I have found. And you know, it's a really good example to see how you can use actual code with these no-code tools, and really the fact that you can use them together is what makes this all so powerful. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please let me know in the comments down below how it's working for you, and I look forward to seeing you back for the next one.